Good afternoon, everyone. It is 3:59 p.m. and welcome to a Personnel and Ordinance Committee meeting in the town of Silverton. All right, let's kick it off.
Our committee members present and yeah, let's see. Okay, great. Lucy's with us. Lucy's going to be presenting on our first agenda item, joining us remotely. So Lucy, if you are ready, you can take it away.
Great. Thank you guys. Sorry, I'm not there in person. Just trying to get a head start with the pass closed, and of course, just opened right after I left. So, but yeah, so the board requested amendments to the outdoor lighting code based on community feedback on our current outdoor lighting code, which was written to meet dark sky international standards, which were required to become a dark sky community. So the feedback was largely that this program was too stringent and not aligned with community vision, specifically related to the lighting curfew and the lighting types within the downtown district. So based on that feedback, I've prepared some amendments to present to you all today and get your direction before bringing in ordinance to the board. And I have highlighted those amendments in the memo, but I've also included the track changes version via a Word document that I emailed to you all earlier today, and that should be in front of you. So any questions before I jump in to reviewing the code amendments?
So let's fire away.
All right, sounds good. So I'll run through these and stop for question and comments. And then if you all want to follow along in the code in case there's a section of the code that I missed or that you'd like to bring up. So based on board discussion, staff is proposing the following amendments. The first is in section BA to remove the requirement that all outdoor lighting should be the minimum amount necessary to provide safety and functionality. And then next, to exempt the downtown mixed-use district from requirements that lighting should be turned off when no one is present to use the light. So meaning lighting could stay on when businesses are closed.
Can we go back to A really quick?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Please just jump in and stop me.
So just A is the requirement to have a minimum of safety and functionality. Do we need to remove that? That actually seems like it should be
only.
Right.
That's
a good point. That's a good point. I think what I was going for was removing the word minimum.
Okay.
Necessary to provide safety and functionality, meaning that any additional lighting that's not only necessary to provide safety and functionality, you know, could be interpreted that any excess light would not be allowed, which I thought we were trying to get away from.
I see what you did there.
Interpreting the code differently than you are.
That's fine. It makes sense what you just said.
Okay. Well, and let me keep looking at this section and make sure that maybe we do specifically call out that lighting, that there should be lighting to provide safety and functionality, but not limit it to only providing safety and functionality, I guess.
I like that better.
Okay. Okay, I'll put a note there to come back to that one. All right. Okay, any issues with exempting structures in the MU1 district from turning their lights on when no one is present to use the light?
I don't have any. No, okay.
Okay. All right, the next section of code requires all light to be fully shielded. And I wanted to check in with you all on the language of fully shielded. So a fully shielded light means that no part of a light bulb is exposed like to the side. So the fixture fully covers the light bulb, which is different from just downward turned lighting, where maybe the light bulb isn't fully shielded, but the light is just pointing down. And so wanted to get your guys' feedback on whether you would like to keep fully shielded in there, or if we would like to replace fully shielded with just downturned, which is a little bit more, a little less restrictive.
Is this in all areas of town or business exempt, business district exempt?
We could do business district exempt, or we could do the whole district. One thing that I'll also bring up at a later point is looking at the idea of creating an exception for marquee lighting, which is like the lighting on the Grand Imperial, on the Teller House, the signs,
Like
the
the
hotel
Wyman?
signs. Yeah.
What about the
Yeah.
arrow?
Yes. Yeah. So like the arrow sign, hotel signs, and then just like the light bulbs that just go straight across buildings, like at the Teller House and at the Grand Imperial.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm proposing that we create an exception for that type of lighting. But then this is another question. So like lighting like above a door, or just on the side of a building.
So if anyone in the future wants to install lighting that goes across or what have you, they have to apply for an exemption?
No, what I propose later is that we just write that into the code as an exemption.
Okay.
So they would not have to apply for like a variance or anything.
Mhm.
That would just be exempt. That type of lighting would be exempt from these specific standards.
Cool. You guys have any questions?
Good with it. What are we calling that? Marquee lighting, the term. Sounds fun.
So besides marquee lighting, are you all in favor of keeping the term fully shielded, or would we like to kind of relax the code even more and move to downturned lighting?
I would like to relax it because that's what we had discussed and what we had approved. But if everyone has a different,
Say downward lighting. Good with that.
Okay.
did you
Okay.
hear that?
It sounds like we want to move to downturned lighting.
Can we include a term that's like appropriately shielded or something? Like, I don't know how specific we can get, well, allowing people to light appropriately for their setting while still like conveying that we want lights to be shielded from facing upwards. And
Yeah.
I think like I could imagine a downward oriented like light bulb on a stick that is still like lighting upward,
Right. Yeah. So
like I agree that we should
partially
try to relax
shielded.
this term, but yeah, I think that we shouldn't just say, oh yeah, point a light bulb downwards and then you're meeting the code.
Okay.
I don't think people are really doing that, but I could imagine
Right.
that we want to be specific as much as possible.
How does this affect the light?
What was that?
How does this affect the lighting in an easy park?
That's a great example. They are just like
strings.
hanging out of string.
So T
string
lights would
lighting?
be exempt, correct? Because they're so low wattage, low voltage, low lumen. And it's in
Are
our
we-
business area?
Are we talking about the string lighting that goes across the EC Park?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So that in our code, we call those bistro lights, and those types of lights are included in the exemptions. So that type of lighting is exempt from
Fantastic.
this specific part of the code.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is that because they're not as bright?
Yes. Yeah. They're not as bright and they're inherently shielded at the top. And they are, lower lumens and typically lower kelvins as well. And we do say that the exempt bistro lights should be under 3000 kelvins.
Thank you.
So that was number 4.
Yep.
Okay.
And then
Bistro and
if-
similar lighting.
if we're following the section of code I put in front of you, the next section talks about lumen limits. So right now we do cap how much light can be emitted from a property. So that's basically looking at, how many light bulbs and how bright are those light bulbs. That's what we call lumens. And so would the town like to continue to regulate the total amount of lumens or light output permitted per site across the board? We could increase that amount for the MU1 district, or we could take away the lumen cap for the MU1 district, or we could take away the lumen cap for whole town. That was one kind of area that I don't think that we had full clarity on when we had our last conversation.
This is where you guys discuss. My thoughts and feelings are I thought we had decided to scrap a lot of this wholesale. So now we're back into a negotiation, I feel. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that now that we're going back and saying we're going to keep this, we're going to keep that. I'm for whatever is less restrictive. That's me personally, and whatever causes less disturbance with the neighbors and with town staff.
Okay.
Frankly, I thought we were done with lights, but it's not.
I agree. I thought we were as well, scrapping all of this.
The direction that I remember receiving was that we wanted to continue having an outdoor lighting code. However, move away from trying to become an dark sky community and make it much less restrictive.
And that's fine.
And Lucy, received direction. I mean, this is back in February, right? Where we're not pursuing dark sky designation, but to take a look at code to see where we can be dark sky friendly, and find that balance between being dark skies friendly and too restrictive.
And my feeling, just to, share a perspective, is like, I think that we should try to have as many exemptions and carve outs for the downtown business district while still pursuing this community goal, which has been articulated to us by a lot of residents, that we want to have awesome night skies here in Silverton.
That's Carl. Right on. Cool. All right. So that's 5.
Yeah, so I guess
Give good direction on 5. We're still on 4.
we're still on the lumen limits. So
Okay.
I think the direction I'm looking for is, do we want to continue to limit how much light output comes from a site across town, or only in the residential, I guess only in the non-downtown districts?
You're talking about lumen limits?
Right. So like basically how many light bulbs you can use on a property. So like, for example, the Daradeli is within the lumen limits per the code. However, the Grand Imperial goes over the lumen limits.
Which is why we discussed about scrapping it in the business district anyway.
Okay, so it sounds like we want to scrap it in the MU1 district.
Am I wrong?
That's
I
what
thought
I
that's what we were talking about that way back in
I
February.
agree.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to get a little bit further direction, I guess, before I bring
Okay,
it
I
back to the
apologize.
board. No, that's okay. This is exactly why we're here having this conversation. So thank you. We'll scrap it in the MU1 district, and then would we like to scrap it across town, or would you guys like to continue to see lumen limits in like on residential properties or in the C1 and C2 districts?
I personally am the wrong one to ask about this because I don't believe we should be limiting people's light bulbs on their building or their home or residence. So I will I will defer to Ron and Carl.
I'm saying safety issues. You want some lights?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need,
Black all over.
My perspective is that it seems like there's more impact about the color temperature and like the kelvins of the light than the overall lumens on a property. I think that it's less important,
Yeah.
my point of view.
Okay,
I,
that makes
is there a way to write it so that it sounds not we're encompassing like a best practices or something? Is that like be neighborly and not just shine a floodlight in your neighbor's window?
You
or
already
something?
can't do that, so.
I don't know. I know what I'm trying to say, but I don't know
Yeah.
how to say it.
Well, and I think if we include in the code that we want, kelvins under 3000 and lighting should be downturn and partially shielded, I think that solves a lot of the issues of like the floodlight shining into someone's, house or, a house being too bright like that. So I think that if we want to just not even go into limiting how bright or how many lights a property can have, I think that it's okay to just scrap it around town.
Okay with that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. I am not proposing any changes to the existing canopy lighting standards, basically like lighting for under a gas station, unless anyone wanted to bring up any changes that they think should be made.
I don't think anybody's wringing their hands about canopy lighting in here.
Cool.
No.
Sweet. I can't see you
always
guys.
everybody on.
I can't see anyone right now, so I
That's
just
where I was the other day.
I don't know.
I couldn't see anybody.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not there in person. Okay. So then moving into outdoor recreational facilities, I am proposing that we remove the requirement that those lights comply with the Illuminating Engineering Society lighting guidelines. I don't think that is necessary. But proposing no other changes. It doesn't seem very stringent. Lighting has to be turned off when a field isn't being used. Any comments on that? Okay.
Common sense, and a sports field is the type of place where you want more of a white light, so.
Right. Okay, and then moving into the sign section of the outdoor lighting code, I'm proposing we just remove lighting standards for signs. Yeah, I think our sign code, if we need to, down the line, maybe relook at that, I think we can. But right now, I don't know if we necessarily need lighting standards for signs.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think this line in your memo, the existing standards are difficult to interpret and administer, is almost an understatement, and
Yeah.
it's been a headache, so.
Yeah. I've had multiple conversations with Dark Sky trying to get some more information about what that section of code actually means, and I still don't really know. So I think that we can just remove that one if we're not trying to become a Dark Sky community.
I think the one thing, would that still include like no neon signs, or were we talking about taking that out too?
So the no neon would come, that would still apply for outdoor signs. For something inside, it would not.
Yeah.
But
Which is
for
currently how it is written right now.
Mhm.
right. Right. The no neon part would come from prohibited lighting section of the code.
And
Great.
I'm good with that. We need
Yeah.
to keep that in place.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay,
Right.
cool.
And does that include, because it could look like neon but not be neon. So are we including neon type lights?
No, it would be,
Just neon or luminous tube lighting is the language.
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
And then I'm proposing that we just remove all lighting curfews. Except for the recreational facilities.
Yep. Thumbs
Cool.
up.
And then we talked about this before, but just one more time coming back. I'm proposing that we add an exemption for this marquee style lighting only in the MU1 district for both signs and for lighting that goes on buildings.
Do we need to?
Sounds like we want to do that.
We don't need to specify locations. We just need to specify a geofence location, a block or two.
It would just be within the entire downtown mixed use
Okay,
district.
perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Sweet.
All right.
Well, I think that we just went through all of the code amendments that I proposed. It sounds like we are going to move forward with all of them, including scrapping lumen limits across town, and then amending the code from lighting should be fully shielded to downturn and partially shielded.
Sounds great.
Good.
Okay, sounds good. So I will take this information and draft an ordinance and bring it to the board.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Any
you.
other comments or anything I missed?
No, my only other comment was after our meeting Monday night, I was down south at my parents' house and they follow this whole trying to be good neighborly with dark skies and stuff.
Yeah.
And their 3 dogs, including myself and my mom, were almost taken out by 2 big ass black bears protecting their cubs 20
Oh,
feet from their
no.
back door because they can't see that far back because they have
Oh,
limited
no.
lighting. So I still want to say that I think people, for safety reasons where we live, we need to have a certain level of light. We just do. And I know that that's
Great.
disruptive to some, but I really do believe that we need to just be cognizant of certain things.
Yeah,
And-
I definitely agree. I think those like motion censored lightings make so much
Yeah.
sense for a lot
Yes.
of places in Silverton. So yeah, hope that people continue to install those and
Cool.
keep each other safe.
Thank you, Lucy.
All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Be safe
Bye-bye.
out there,
Will do. I'll stay away from the bears.
please.
Thanks.
All right.
In
Bye-bye.
dark alleys.
Yes.
All right, next.
All right, so next we have agenda item number 2, amendments to 7-8-350 running at large fines. And so for this agenda item, we have memos from both Bevan and I'll just touch a little bit on Steve's contribution. He's down in Durango at the moment. So pertaining to the potential location for a dog park. And this is the piece of the puzzle that goes directly with potentially amending code to allow off-leash areas within town. Back in fall of 2025, the FPR committee did approve utilizing the baseball field as a dog park location. More recently, however, the FPR committee had some concerns about utilizing that location and just dual use, dog waste not being ideal. So Steve has been looking into both the inner track as well as beyond the baseball outfield as potential locations. So while the final location of a dog park has not been identified yet, Steve is making progress toward that with input from the FPR committee. Steve is looking into, utilizing existing materials to make this happen. Whether, staff time or additional hardware needed to erect a chain link fence at either location, there will be some additional cost that needs to go into this. It is important to note, though, that other communities in our area do have dog parks that aren't fenced in. In the packet, Steve has identified those locations on the map. And I'll hand it off to Bevan to speak a little bit more about concerns or issues related to enforcing off-leash dogs and cats. And how these two initiatives kind of go hand in hand, and what sort of code updates we would be looking at to establish a dog park.
So, yeah, part of this is movement to, one, provide obviously off-leash exercise for your dogs. The other aspect brings up, enforcing all dogs to be on leash, or to show that the owners have command of their dog off leash. I'm certainly concerned with dogs having been attacked, like Jeff's in town. And it's, regardless of it being accidental, it's still a lack of control and an aggressive dog to some extent. So I think certainly offering an area where people can take their dogs to run off lead is great. It doesn't guarantee that those dogs aren't going to get scrapped. But it's at least contained within that fenced area. And the expectation is that if you're allowing your dog to be off leash, that it's going to be under control or behave to be in that area. So I think utilizing the back of the fenced area of the ball field, there's quite a bit of area there. So we could utilize that. There's 514 feet of
Existing fence line.
existing fence. So it wouldn't be in the ball field. It'd be called the home run dog park, or,
Cool.
and then we could adjust the size of it, utilizing that existing fence. So it reduces cost quite a bit, and then determine, there's so little traffic back there, with the exception of anyone on the running track. Then you have the swimming ponds on the other side that could act as a barrier, but certainly, enforcing leash on all dogs in town is gonna generate a lot of resistance. Because there are plenty of people that want to have their dogs off leash um, and I have mixed feelings about that. I have dogs on leash, but you know, in circumstances they can be off leash, but in general, I know the liability and the concern of residents and not knowing their dogs. So, that brings that aspect. And depending upon, I'm open to discussing whatever our emphasis wants to be, what we want to emphasize on today. If it's to move toward the dog park, if it's also including discussing the leash law and, the extent of how we want to, move on enforcing that. Vague enough?
Yes,
I've got a couple of questions. Say, I know
funny.
there's dog parks all over.
Yeah.
Say two dogs get in a fight, one dog gets killed, one dog gets injured. Where's the town's liability on that?
I don't know that. I mean, that's certainly valid.
I would imagine, like, my first thought is that these exist everywhere and it's not a huge issue, so we must be, covered under some governmental immunity, but
I'd like to.
that is a good
It
question to have a
yes.
better answer to.
and examples and see how exactly that would.
My next concern is that people aren't gonna pick up after their dogs.
Yeah.
It is, and if we do go with the dog park, we see a bunch of feces there that didn't get picked up, then I'd say we need to shut it down. If we have it, because there's no reason that people can't pick up after their dog.
They can't pick up after the dog out on the streets, let alone, and that's just the reality of it. I mean, probably my biggest problem with dogs off leash in town is that owners aren't always with their dog and the dog go and do their thing. The owner's not aware, they're not watching. And
Bite somebody, fine example.
yeah, where they bite someone. The owner was both owners were with the dog or the person watching them, but
Wasn't on a leash.
right, they were loading into the car and then it jumped out. The other one was the dog that was killed was off leash and it went up to a dog that was on the leash that was known to be aggressive, but the dog on the leash killed the dog that was off leash. And, just a really sad, unfortunate circumstance. But if the dogs are under control and that raises the pick up poop, whether it's in the park or out in public, is always a responsibility. And if we're going to have the dog park, I think there's going to be some responsibility on the town on making sure it's clean. And I'm not saying that that's how I'd want to spend my time, but we have to do it as far as keeping the streets clean. I think it's unrealistic to think that we've got to shut the park down because,
It's not the town's responsibility to pick up after other people's dogs.
I fully get it. I agree with you.
I'd like to make a few comments. So got a dog last year. Shortly after we got a dog, we went on a big 12-day trip. We visited, I think, at least 8 different dog parks. Dog parks are great. I'm not a very social person. There are studies out there that show that dog parks are really good for socializing people because they keep people contained. Everyone's there with their dog, ask about each other's dog. In my experience, dog parks don't have a lot of poop. Also, in my experience as a Parks and Rec employee, there's a lot of dog poop around town. There probably will be some poop in the dog park. But all of our surrounding communities, other than Telluride, Lake City, I'm not sure about Hermosa, have some kind of designated off-leash area, fenced in or not. Ridgeway and Durango don't have fences. We have a lot of dogs here. I feel like we need some space for them. And I look forward to, if we can make it happen, I look forward to meeting all the other dog owners and dogs in town. I really like dogs.
Except for one.
Yeah, it's a dog. It's a dog.
Hey, there's one aspect of it where you can see when the dog's going to the bathroom and you can see whether the owner's picking up or not. You know, sometimes.
Worse than when everybody's in the space together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's an aspect of that. And, you know, owners want their dogs to be able to run around and not be running in feces. So, so there's an aspect of it. And maybe we designate an area, you know, near there that can be the, you know, the bathroom site. I don't know, you know, and I've seen dog parks do that. So it's designated, more dogs go there. They know to clean it. It's contained. You know, it's not a guarantee, but we do it as humans.
Yeah, we could see if in the future the budget could support signage about picking up after your dog at the park. If it really does is, you know, unruly mess over there, you know, the potential to consider fines associated with not picking up after dogs.
I'm trying to think of like why the dog parks I've been to seem clean. I think there can be some steps we can take to make sure the poop is very visible. Like in Uray, that dog park there is mostly gravel. Dog poop's really easy to see. And other places they have AstroTurf or it's mowed frequently and kept clean. But I think the biggest part, like when I go to the dog park in Montrose, everyone tends to gather in a circle and watch each other's dogs. And if someone's dog's poops and the owner doesn't pick up after, there's a big shame. But I think it would go, well here.
I'm in favor of doing the dog park. I think we have limited resources and it should not be our top priority, but if we can make it happen, we should. That's my perspective.
I like that area because it's not really been utilized. It's not in the ball field and similar odor to the waste treatment plant, screen. And it's really, you know, it's an effort on our part to accommodate, you know, dog owners that want to be able to provide that access for them. And then, you know, that I presented 6,000, that was based off a certain square footage, utilizing quite a bit of that end. That could be reduced in size. It was based on a medium, you know, 20,000, roughly 20,000 square foot dog park, which is kind of in the middle of the mid-sized community dog parks. So, and we, you know, that can be adjusted to what we have available. I know we have quite a bit of chain link fence. I don't know the size of it. Generally, dog park fence is about 4 feet. And
Looks like we've got some chain link fences 5 feet tall that we can utilize. So I think Steve just identified to get something off the ground sooner rather than later, hardware and some concrete costs.
Right.
It does seem like we can pull this off sooner rather than later with relatively small budget impacts.
Yeah, and that concrete that I figured was based off bag concrete. If we got mixed concrete, it could be a bit cheaper. It would just be prepping and all. And yeah, is there anything else on this that you want to discuss or have comment or recommendations on?
As I was just thinking, like, if it's not in the budget and we can't make it work, URay kind of has both. They have a fenced-in dog park. For part of the year, they have a designated off-leash area. Felon Park is considered an off-leash area during certain hours outside of the summer season. And two areas I was thinking that might work that would have natural boundaries. I'm not sure if they're town property or not, but Pittsburgh Mine Road, got the river on one side, got the hill on the other. And then below Lackawanna Mine, on that road, it's the same thing. So those could be free. All we need is a sign. And to change the code.
The Lackawanna Mine Road is a nice area. I don't know that a ton of people utilize it, but one of my concerns with Pittsburgh Mine Road is a lot of willows, the potential for more moose there.
Yeah.
And it's just harder to see them. So I walk my dogs down there a lot and it's great.
So maybe for direction for today, what we're looking at then is seeking direction to, once a location has been identified and we're moving forward, going to be based on, Steve's involvement. Moving forward with drafting an ordinance to update code will be contingent upon having solid plans and a spot identified for the dog park.
And maybe it's, starts with off leash at Lackawanna, and then as we get funding for the chain link fence at the ball field, that we could do that.
Is there any way to pull Google Maps up on there? I'm looking at it right here based on this discussion. And I just want to get my head wrapped around this. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah,
Oh, okay.
that'll be helpful.
Talking like it's direct immediately south of like the south back fence of the baseball field. That's right.
Yeah, and I apologize for not
No, you're
putting a map on it.
satellite view.
Yeah. So it's on the other end. It'd be.
You're right over there, yeah.
So we go to a satellite, we can see it.
At the bottom left-hand corner. There you go.
We go that way.
Like this. Do.
Satellite looks good.
Hey. There you go.
Yeah. Right, so it's really, this is the fence right here. So it would be this area here that I proposed. Accessible from an entry here.
So you park the visitor center, walk along the track.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't want them out here.
Definitely, that would be my concern.
Yeah.
Trying to.
This is a property line right there.
Yep.
So you've got this corridor here,
Correct.
and then it gets wider and you can even bring it over here.
We could, yeah, I mean, that would require fencing around this. I just figured a straight line here and. But yeah, we can do it any way we want. I just thought it would be. They can park here, kind of walk the dogs here, it's a good shakeout. And then enter into like a little vestibule, double gate, and then into the park.
It's another reason for people to stop at the visitor center too. Here you go.
Yeah, and I'm not addressing walking your dog on on the running track, so. I don't know how much room there is. I can measure that out, might be able to
It's-
walk on.
I'm guessing it's like maybe 4 feet.
Okay, I mean, there's enough to walk.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't want dogs on the ball field. Like, that's not fair. So. And I kind of like them not in the middle of the track. And we get to utilize, this is less impactful on the back of that fence line. And they'd be balls there for the dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. Any home run?
Yeah.
Goes to the dogs.
Ron loves that.
I mean, this is multi-prong attack to a bigger. There are laws on the books that have not been enforced purpose. And it's certainly not, that doesn't come on town, it comes on the other entity, the law enforcement entity. And it is extremely unfortunate what happened to you. What happened to your pup. I like this idea. I love the location. Just close enough, just far enough away. Encouraging folks to use it is going to be fun and interesting because what I've seen is we understand there's leash laws. We can remind people there are leash laws. And most folks just look at you and then keep walking with their dog, doing whatever they want to do. And there's money in the budget for this. It's not, I mean, it's not a funded thing, but I don't think this should be that very expensive.
Correct. It seems like there's a possibility of us, moving forward with this, without needing to invest in much additional hardware.
Oh, I like it. And I think the verbiage we can just borrow from other communities.
Certainly.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
I'm good with it.
Cool. Yeah.
I do think we should try to answer that question of like, what is the appropriate signage to put up so that owners understand when they're entering
Yeah.
this area, like. You know, it's an off-leash area, they need to pick up their poop, whatever.
I'll hang out there with binocs, taser and.
We have those grab bags around town and people use them. I see people use them all the time.
Those have to be there. That's a total given, and a trash can and, yeah.
My partner Ash did reach out to GoCo to see like, oh, can we get a grant? We can't through GoCo. Cause basically we've already gotten some GoCo grants and we need to wait 2 or 3 years before we get more. But they did point us to like 8 or 10 other resources where we might be able to get grants. So that could be a possibility. I wish they had pointed us to 2 or 3, so it would be easy. But we may be able to get some grant money for this as well.
Well, great. We'll plan to bring an ordinance before the board once we have solid plans in place for the location and timeline of the. Okay. Any other comments on the dog park? We can move forward to agenda item number 3. Amendments to 7-2-17. We're gonna be looking at campers.
All right. So bring this to your attention, primarily because campers are more regulated in the Muni Code as it pertains to workforce housing campers. There's really not much there that pertains to visitors with their campers or residents that have campers or residents that have guests staying in a camper, campers on private land that without a structure, primary structure, So I'm just seeing where we need, in order for me to enforce aspects of this, I need the code to reflect a broader surface. Some of them, in my concern, are certainly visitors that are unrelated to any residents and are camping at will. I mean, I can enforce that on them because they can't camp in town at night, but it gets blurry when you can have a visitor camp, but just a resident's friend camp, but a visitor is a little bit harder to enforce or identify. So I suggested the possibility of having stickers or signage associated with residents. So we have a application for workforce housing. It's a permit they put in their window. I'd like to have a sticker for workforce housing that they can put on the outside of the camper. It's easier to identify, be a different color. And then the residents could have one hang tag and a sticker for their own RV if they have one. And the hang tag could be for a guest. And then, you know, there's some communities that actually permit for visitors. So if they're coming to town and we wanted to give them the opportunity to camp, we'd have the option of permitting them with a timeline and some kind of identifying sticker or hang tag. My biggest issue with the code is that the enforceable area that I can address is really related to workforce housing campers, and it doesn't pertain to everyone else. And that makes it challenging. When campers stay on private property that within town that is not developed, it draws more campers to that area. And that's problematic because there are generally no services, no utilities set up for them. And there's just more risk of problems occurring from that. So it's not a huge problem, but it's frustrating for me when I can't enforce them to, you know, to be on private property that has a primary structure, has utilities to support them. And so I'm suggesting that we look at the code and look at areas and possibly amend or develop the code in that other area beyond just workforce housing.
Yeah, I've now lived in two different spots in town with immediate next door neighbors who come and camp on their undeveloped lands a couple of times throughout the summer, and it's always somewhat of a nuisance for the neighborhood.
Yeah, and how many campers can be on property? That really only is identified in workforce housing. It's not identified in general for private residents who have, you know, friends staying instead of employees or workers.
Correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we kind of have this hashed out last year?
We did.
But we did, but we tabled it as
I don't remember that.
Um. Yes, we have discussed this. And I thought I was under the interpretation the understanding that we had interpretive language already that specified you can't have cords going over sidewalks and right of way, and you can't have water, which would mean a cord to me.
that aspect's not a problem.
Okay.
But
And then as far as units in the right of way themselves, I mean, you can't park something indefinite, but this is specifically for friends of a family or family members or,
yeah, guests of residents. And more specifics on parking and on property and property that's developed versus property that's undeveloped.
right?
I mean, technically, we shouldn't even be able to store campers and trailers on undeveloped land. And that's, so I think if the code were more specific, I don't know if it's being more specific or being more vague that helps us in this, but I just want to make sure that if I'm as enforcing it, that I've got teeth to bite into on this. And I recall that we discussed it and we agreed to the specifics on the workforce housing, and we sort of tabled the specifics on residence camping. And that's why I'm here again, is to address that.
And this is if a camper or staying in a residence goes over a 20-day, because we have a 20-day limit. We have verbiage on the books
That, yeah, that's about all that's in there in the code, is that 20-day limit for guests.
So are you suggesting that it would be like one direction would be to go, you can't camp on an undeveloped lot? Like
No.
there's no structure on the property. Is that the main issue that's like still unresolved, or is it something else?
It's that, and it's specifics on more details about how and what the guidelines are for guests in RVs with a private resident. So the problem with, raw land is not like we have a ton of that in town, but it does exist. And so the problem that arises is that it attracts more people to camp there, and it's not necessarily managed. I can't, and there are cases where someone has blocks of land and they want to go camp on there, or they're storing their camper and their trailer, and people think that they can go and camp on it. So now we're having to manage and monitor that.
I think we need to go back and see what we
had discussed before.
Yes. Before we make any decision.
Yeah. And then do you have any specific examples of where this is happening within city limits?
Sure.
Within town limits, I guess.
Sure. I mean, in the,
Not to put you on the spot,
sorry,
but I,
in the Y or out by the whistle stop, the Saunders have a lot of land out there.
okay,
Brian Luther's got land there that he's storing camper, trailer, gas tanks, propane tanks, among other things, a vehicle, I think. Saunders they have a camper parked for sale, a slide in close to the road. And then I saw today that it has to be a guest because they have a locked gate on the other side of the creek that is staying on their land there. And that's just in that area. There's an area on, I think, Cement Street, or no, it's on Empire, where there are campers, 3 large motor coaches parked on that lot, and another trailer. And
Those are my neighbors.
okay, so technically, there's nothing in the code that would prevent them from doing that. If it were workforce housing, they would be held to 1 per 2,500 square foot lot.
In that case, they would be allowed 4 on that, right? Because it's a 10,000 square foot
Yeah, I mean,
property.
at one time, we had discussed, prior to the new adoption, it was 1 per parcel. So if you had, that was the whole issue with Ken Bowden, is he had 5 or 6 lots, and he had 4 campers on there.
Yeah.
The bigger issue there was the unfortunate, spill of Blackwater, and it not really, our concern about it not being managed safely, or we had tenants that were using it that weren't really familiar with infrastructure of a camper.
If I could vent, I would guess that the stickers or tags piece might be kind of the like seal the deal on this, because if you could tie it back to an existing property
Right.
owner, then it's like there is someone can kind of hold that liability. Like every year we get people on Blair Street that pull up in that lot and they say they know the owners and they'll pull an RV in there and stuff. And it's not an RV lot, and we haven't been able to verify that they actually know anybody who owns that. Sure.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, it's a quick way for,
Next to a building, 12th, 13th block. On Blair. So.
it's a quick way for myself and the sheriff's department to identify RVs and if they're legal or not. Because anyone else is really not allowed to camp in town. So, unless we alter that.
I agree that there's issue in some places. I don't know if this is like somewhere that there's a clear direction that we could do something that would like address this immediately. I like the idea of stickers, but it also seems like a whole can of worms and a different challenge, So I guess my feeling is like, what can we just take from the workforce housing thing, which we talked about ad nauseum, and apply it in this case that provides, like you said, a little bit more of a backstop to have conversations and maybe direct the sheriff's department towards issues that doesn't require a whole new set of code.
Right. Well, if we sticker them, permitted them for residents, RVs, and afforded them the ability to identify their guests, camper, if that's staying in town, that would be a quick way to do it with not a whole lot of amendments, to the code. I think if you're allowed to have and live in your camper if you are building on raw land, if you are building a new home. And that is allowed during the time, the permit period. But beyond that, we don't have anything that addresses campers that are staying on raw land, or even being stored. So we do have it in the county, but not in town. So that would be one area that I'd like addressed. And I can certainly put together my recommendations for the amendments. I wanted to start it out with the initial aspect of this. As you know, and where we're absent of code that can help me enforce it.
Ron?
I still like to see what we did previous.
I was just gonna ask, what Bevan specifically identifying, addressing, owners of property, setting up camp for, X amount of days in the summer season on their land, or the number of campers that are allowed on an owner's land, whether there's friend or family. Do you recall, were those items specifically addressed in maybe the previous conversations that have been?
Have, then we addressed color coding of coming in and getting a license, size of a piece of copy paper and putting it in their window. I have a real difficult time telling a property owner that they can't store or house their own personal items on their own personal property. That's just me personally. A very difficult time with that. Whether it's on the books or not. That's just me. I know that there were some troublesome spots around town back in 2024. This originally came up, Carl, myself, Lucy was driving, Amy was in the front seat, and we drove around and we went down every alley, every street in town and pinpointed where our problem children was, so to speak. And there were a couple spots where it looked as if, I wouldn't say they were taking advantage of the system, where they were just housing a lot of people there and then claiming at the time, and you remember this, claiming at the time it was employee housing when it was really, so-and-so's friend up and hanging out. And we have had that. And it's probably crept back in because the problem went away for a while because we brought the hammer down pretty hard. Now it's back.
Yeah, well, I don't know how severely it is back, but the other aspect is managing it from utility standpoint and who's taking paying that for that. And inevitably it comes down to the towns paying for it when, if we regulate it, maybe we say, hey, you can have as many as you can fit on your property, but part of that permitting is figuring in how much added cost the town is incurring due to utility use. Does that make sense?
But if the homeowner or property owner are paying for the utilities, they're paying for it anyway.
I know they're paying for it, but if you're adding, 2 or 4 more families to it for, 20 days, what does that look like?
Right. I do think we are addressing that in another way though, by moving towards getting meters on everybody's property. I think like that. The thing that I do think is worth addressing, and I agree, we've talked about a lot of this. We did table the conversation about specifically like this piece, as you said, raw land, people camping on it. You don't know if they're the owners or not. I would like to see something around that, but I think that's the specific area. I think the rest of this feels like it's been addressed. And
Still say.
it doesn't mean that, you know, we don't need to maybe think about how to approach it, but in terms of like what's in the code, I think it's been addressed. That's my perspective.
Well, and the empty lot next to your building, the one that's between the old arcade, Gertie's, and your building, that's owned by the Saunders.
There's another owner that's in between.
Owner from New York.
Yeah, it's technically like 3 lots. And so they always claim they know the New York person who we've not been able to run down, but
Which we've never met.
yeah.
I've talked to, but I've never.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I were to venture, you know, another thought on it, there could maybe be something that's like, there doesn't need to be money taken for like permitting. It could be like trash tags potentially, where you assign it to the account number that's affiliated with the lot or something like that. Say, hey, you can have as many campers as you want, whatever, not amend code, but still have it tied to something that's, you know, if a liability situation comes up on Blackwater, you say, hey, we know what the problem is.
I got a complaint of 3 vehicles parked out on Fifth by Anvil, entrance to Anvil. Went and checked it out. They immediately told me they're friends of the owner of that property behind them. I knew who that was. Technically, they can do that. I mean, they're parking on his land and they're camping there as well. And then the owner came and brought his camper and it's on his property, and I can't really limit that. The perception from residents was that that was not allowed.
Right. So this comes back to better messaging?
For me, I think it's just really having the aspect of the code clear so that,
Right.
because it's really, I can't go over every specific, but
and
based of, right, and broad based of like, okay, we're gonna allow this, or the issue that came up with like the Saunders property is they had, you know, there were 5, 6 different campers out there with friends or family out there. And then more people wanted to go out on the road that were unrelated. And I had no way to identify it or even identify whether they're on the Saunders property or someone else's. So, it's like the campfire rings, or rock rings for a campfire. If that ring is there, then people think it's okay to camp there. It's not designated BLM, campsite. But because those rocks and that fireplace are there, fire ring, it looks like it's okay to camp there. It's the same effect with RVers. But that must be a place that we can do. If the town is okay with that being there, I'm fine with it. I need to have an answer to people who have a complaint about it.
And look at the code. I don't know. I just I have a lot of personal thoughts on this,
Okay.
but we want to table and come back to it.
Thought we were good. People's. I guess not.
Yeah, my feeling is like it's one of many things that is mostly a non-issue, but it's been an issue in the past, and it is the right thing to be thinking about it before it becomes an issue again. But I would like to see maybe like specific suggestions.
Okay, I'll do that.
Because that might guide our conversation more efficiently.
All right. Shipping containers.
All right, I need 2 minutes. Be right back. So shipping containers, currently town does not allow them for long-term use. They do allow them for temporary use during construction. There are quite a few in town that have been grandfathered in, so to speak. Like shipping containers. I think they're super valuable, and especially in our climate. One of the main issues that comes up from residents that live next door to them is that they complain about their potential impact on their resale value or real estate values. I'm not in disagreement with them. I think there are cases where they could be cladded, covered, so that they look more like a shed and are less offensive as a commercial storage unit. And I'm trying to find a resolution for having them and encouraging the town, and I'm going to do it with the county as well, to allow residents to have them, but have them screened or camouflaged in a way so that they can fit in more with the architecture and the design of our community. Currently the land use code identifies them as allowed up to 16 feet. That is not a size of shipping container that I've been able to find. They're all 10, 20, and 40-foot increment sizes. We have had contractors use 40-foot container in part because they had long materials. I think that's a harder one to find a space for, but it's not out of the question. It also opens up the possibility of having a shipping container home, and
Which I think is awesome.
yeah, I mean, there are challenges with that in our environment, with humidity and sweating between the hot and the cold, but if they're insulated well, it's less of an issue. And they're super durable, they're affordable. And in no way am I saying I don't want people to have them. I just think we could do more to make them blend in. And
Planting foliage around it and stuff like that.
yeah, you could do that. I mean,
Picket fence or something to,
I think people have suggested just painting them so they don't look like, a common Connex color, or I'm not sure what it could be, putting a roof on it. I've seen people put them under a roof or under a deck. I mean, you can make it completely disappear and then have a door that opens up that gives you access to that. These are just suggestions on my part. The benefit would be that it would allow residents to have them again in town long term, and because I have had people request that. And I guess I wonder why they're not allowed currently long term, and that might by having that answer, it may address what the resolution could be for them.
it was a beautification issue. Or
Yeah, I think that's primarily it. If we had, I mean, technically you could have a trailer from like a semi in town, and you can store those long term. I don't think it's a great look unless it's somewhat hidden.
Previous building inspector was the one that would approve all of the storage containers. He also allowed those to be long-term. So I would say that the existing, and they had to be in good shape. They had to be like used one or two times and not all trashed up and and rusted and poor looking shape. So those that fall under the previous administration, in my book, should be grandfathered in, and then anything new comes in should have to put the facade on it for repair.
That's still not addressing the
They were
current containers.
set up and they were approved by the building inspector.
That's fine, but I'm addressing wanting to improve the town's look, address residents' concerns about the existing containers and trying to find a resolution for both.
So that's a financial burden for those existing containers.
It's a burden that they can endure for having the convenience of having that container.
How do you know they can afford that?
I'm saying it's a choice. They could either plat it or remove it. That's my suggestion.
So then you're saying if you remove it, you'd have to build a building to store your equipment that you have inside it.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if they're platted or camouflaged in some way so that they're less of a nuisance, that the resident who has that container can keep it. I'm not saying they have to get rid of it, but
I would say you need to grandfather those in that are already existing, and new ones that come in, then make them go with the painting
right.
or.
That's not addressing my challenge and the complaints that I've gotten from residents that are living next door to containers and the impact it has on their.
But they were approved.
But if they're approved and they've been essentially accepted long-term, many years now, can we go arbitrarily go and change it and tell them
Well, I think
I don't-
like
I
the
don't
issue
think
with
we wanna-
many different building code things, right? It's like when there's some event triggers them having to come into compliance, but otherwise I agree. I don't think we can just say you have to do this.
That would
But we
be,
could put it into the code, like if you're doing, you're doing something that requires some amount of, you're doing remodeling, you're doing some sort of redevelopment, whatever. Then we have to be compliant with the new code, which would be, we want them cladded.
that
I
would
think
be,
that seems like a good compromise.
that would be like saying homes are built on 24-inch centers for studs. The new code said they're 16-inch, so now you're making people go back that have the 24-inch studs comply with a 16-inch.
Well, that's the more structural issue than what we're talking about. That's apples to oranges.
So then aesthetic issues should everybody have to repaint their home?
well, this comes back to the good taste society that Dana used to call it. And she wasn't wrong. And what someone sees as an eyesore, someone sees as just being functional. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, why don't you plant a tree next to it or put a shrubbery up next to it or something like that, but saying either comply or rip it out or remove it.
I'm not, this is all
No, and we're just having a conversation.
options. And if it's a consideration of allowing residents to have containers in town and then clad them and people like that idea,
I really like that idea. I think we allow them up to the full 40-foot length. We can have some sort of language that's around, looking like a
disguising.
like it should not be, a shipping container sitting out on its own in the middle of somebody's yard. Because we have a lot of things in the code and the building code that cover these kind of aesthetic considerations and.
Right.
But I think it can totally be a functional shed and people should be able to use them. I think it's the situation that we're in is because we haven't had a specific language around how do you.
Well, that relates exactly to campers. It's the challenge that I'm facing.
We had a property go for sale last week, actually across the street from you. And that gentleman has a shipping container on the back of his property. And that property literally had an offer on it within 48 hours. So I don't think that it lowers values. In fact, I think it increases the value of your property,
But that's the,
especially here in Silverton when we have limited amount of storage within people's lots. We just don't have, Silverton has a limited area within the property to store stuff. And we've seen it time and time again,
totally.
which is why our previous director, Bill Mack, allowed these things to happen, and especially in certain zones. And now that some of those zones have changed is where we're starting to hear people say, oh, well, this is a residential zone now, so why don't we clean this up?
Well, he was building inspector when the code changed and didn't allow them. So
And
it
the ones that
wasn't,
were already here, they were grandfathered in.
yeah, that's fine, but I'm just saying, I was here, when I got here, he was working with me and they were not allowed long-term. So it happened at some point before 22, which is fine. In the case with that individual that purchased that property, they benefit from having the container.
They do.
Right, yeah, I don't know whether, if the property next door that didn't have the container, how that might impact their values, but I'm just trying to find resolutions. I love containers, but I do want to acknowledge and respect owners that perceive them to be challenging. So that's all.
And some things we just don't need to find resolution for. And I'm not picking on this particular topic, but I think there are things that we should be enforcing and things that we don't enforce because it's just not within our purview to do so. And again, I'm not saying this specific topic. I just think there are things that town is responsible for to be looking in on and reviewing, and then other stuff that you have neighbors that say, oh, well, I don't like this, I don't like that. Well, sometimes that's just on you. And that should take a lot off your plate.
Yeah, I mean, I still have to deal with the complaints, but
And you're not the only one. But people like to complain, and again, I'm not picking on this topic or any other topic, but there are things that
it's like the leash law.
yeah, that's a perfect one.
I mean,
People all end up after their dogs,
make everyone,
but it's not,
and they say the answer.
the leash law is not under your purview. It's not. You don't carry a badge or handcuffs or a gun. I'm dead serious about this because we've talked about this numerous times. Putting you in a line of danger with someone's dog who's not on a leash, who's not under control, that puts you in danger, and that you should never be in that position. And I've said that 100 times. You shouldn't. But yet we have all these laws on the books that don't get enforced, so here we are. And that to me is frustrating. That's just me.
I don't think it's just you.
You don't think it's what?
I feel like Jim might not be the only one frustrated about it. It's not being enforced.
Anyway,
And I agree, it's, that's, a lot of that is outside of town staff's responsibility.
So maybe with regard to shipping containers, the heart of the matter is the question of, is there an appetite, conversation, and look at code, to allow for long-term use of them in town again? And if so, to make that, palatable, the necessary, cladding, that would need to go along with that.
I think not, if I was like writing the code right now, I would say you can have them everywhere. If it's R1 or R2, it needs to be clad to look like some sort of a stick-built shed. That would be my, if I were
And possibly amend to the larger sizes too, since it sounds like the 16.
16 doesn't exist. So I don't know where that came from, but
And I agree with Bevan. They don't exist. The minimum is 20 to 40. That's what you end up seeing.
It also sounds like the committee's interested in grandfathering in everything that currently exists.
I think it could be
And that perhaps,
composite like that material.
move something with the same as if.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at probably
Or something like that.
material.
You know, requirements for flat. They would do it.
Yeah.
Around
90-foot container.
And
I have a friend that just did this on.
Existing property owners don't have to have a permit.
Yeah.
Finance has to get it as flat or move it. But if something gets altered.
The doors was the hard part. You just left the doors. I don't know what we do about that.
I think I don't think it's a difficult request to say like put up a fence around it or put up some shrubbery or what have you. But when you start asking people to put up essentially a pole barn over their zircons, that's where you get into big bucks. That's just what it is. And why do people purchase shipping containers? Because they're sturdy and they're relatively inexpensive.
yeah, I had someone interested in a bathroom zircon and a kitchen zircon to use for a property of raw land that could be developed for a business. And that was super interesting. Currently the code wouldn't allow that, but there's an example where if we allow them, someone could do that and it.
Well, I think putting up a 6-foot fence around a zircon, at least 3-sided to where, or 2-sided to where your neighbors, where it's obstructing.
Sure.
I don't think that's too much to ask personally, but again, I'm just one person. Or even putting up shrubbery. I just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some level of demand for people wanting these. But in order to make them, aesthetically pleasing for the community, with the requirements that we would potentially enact be too burdensome. And so maybe, right, is it then not worth it to consider starting to allow them again?
Well, I'll pick on the railroad, for instance. There's 2 zircons, like 40 feet long, I think. They're over there. They're over in the industrial zone. The request that was made, because they were originally green when they arrived. And the request that was made by the town was to paint them up. I think they're beige now. They're just like an off-white. I think it's eggshell is what it was called. Eggshell. So, and it looks a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. It's not perfect, but it's also in the industrial zone. And I think there's zircons that are bright blue. There are ones that are like army green. I mean, this is where you get into the good taste police. So I know how I feel. It's totally up to you guys.
Personally, I think let it go.
Let it go. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
And not allow them
No,
outside of the ones that already exist.
outside of the ones that already exist, just leave them as they are. As far as people requesting new ones, I don't have an opinion on that yet.
Well,
I do think that it's the type of thing that we can. I feel that we should be supporting it, help people develop their property. And I do also totally see the argument that like in the residential areas, people don't want to feel like they're living next to a storage facility. They want to feel like they're living next to a home. And if the zircon dominates the lot, then that changes the feeling. And I think that is really, really difficult to quantify or to put a specific, requirements around. That's the challenge, right?
Maybe it's allowing
you say that, but
the construction of a 8.5-foot high fence around the zircon so that it screens it. And then, maybe that's the answer. I don't know what the answer is yet.
allow 8.5-foot fences?
No,
But you get around it. Just search on.
They're generally 3.5 feet high and 8 feet wide. So I'm just thinking of,
I think the paint thing, paint and a 6 foot fence.
I think it's, yeah, exactly, painting and 6 foot fence. I agree with that.
Maybe what the next step is for this conversation is for us to present
And then take it to the bigger board.
a variety of like from very low cost, just paint to cladding, an array of options that if we want to pursue allowing zircons, new zircons to be in town, the options we have for disguise, making them aesthetically pleasing, kind of have that array of from low cost to more high cost and what feels right for requirements.
I agree. I for one would hate to see someone drop a big blue shipping container with minced writing on the side of it. It would be terrible.
and I think there's probably a common ground that we can come to that's affordable and that'll help resolve the issues. Part of me wants to address that. The other part is wanting to present the possibility of having zircons for residents in town because we all know their benefit. In the county, I've got someone who wants to put one in to store solar batteries in it, have the solar array on top at an angle and bury it into the side of the hill. I think it's a really cool use of space, effective, but they're not allowed for long-term use in the county as well.
Been buried?
Even buried. So, but I think, yeah, I mean, you're disguising it.
Right.
You'd have solar anyway, and it's a more secure and, protected from the elements.
Well, it's cheaper and quicker way to get to where you're trying to go with that type of project.
Right. And you don't have to build a garage. You can just put that in. And so there's an example in the county, that's, and it could be applicable to town too, but
Finally built my bunker.
yeah, there's,
You guys have no idea.
Great, we'll plan to come back with some examples.
okay. And I'll look for some,
See, these are the hardy discussions I love.
I'll look for some design, examples and just, I mean, even to like fence or paint cladding. I don't want to, penalize the current owners of them. I think we can find a way to do this. But it's also gotta, deal to help resolve the issues of, making them less offensive
Mm-hmm.
or less impactful in that way. All right. Survey required.
Yeah, on to our last agenda item for the day.
Okay. So some of us know the challenges with not having a survey and building without that. Currently, planning and building does not require survey for development. But they can be requested if we presume that it's necessary. And I'm okay with still having that option, but I think in the case of transfer of ownership, title, sale, that it ought to be provided either by the seller or probably by the seller of the property, that they have a survey presented. And it's come up with fences and accessory buildings, like sheds, where people think they know where the property line is. I have one recently that the fence is 6 feet over onto the other person's property, but it's been there for 50 years. I don't know. So without assuming that we know where it is. And that's not always a guarantee. I mean, surveyors can be wrong. But if that's utilized at the beginning before anything goes into the ground or anything is built on the surface, that is going to be more beneficial and helpful in the long run. So what am I asking for? I guess Lucy and I talked about still having situations where a survey might not be necessary. And per code, we can require it. I'm saying I'm going to require it for fences, in most cases, the wildfire resilience code, which is now enforceable as of today. I need to have surveys provided for that. I don't want to be in a situation again where someone's building outside their property line. And I think that it should be mandatory for sale and transfer of ownership. Or do you want to just leave it to Lucy and I to make the call at that time? The challenge with it is if it's not identified as required, like in a sale, then it might be skipped. And we're not always privy to a sale. It's only when they're coming to develop that we end up having to require it.
You wouldn't require this for the repair or replacement of an existing fence, would you?
I mean, here's an example where this person was getting ready to build, repair, replace the fence. And it just so happened that the property owner next door was a new owner, or I'm not sure how long they've owned the property, but raw land, and they were having a surveyor come in, and Dirk indicated that the existing fence is 6 feet over from where he thinks the property line is. So 6 feet onto the person with the raw land, undeveloped land. So there's a case where I'm assuming that the fence is on the property line, right? But it's actually not. And I wouldn't have known that unless a survey was provided. And then it's kind of addressing the long-term problem of the fence not being placed on their property. I've got a fence. I'm going to rebuild it. Do I go off where it is now? Or do I have to provide a survey? If I had an agreement with the owner, with my neighbor saying, hey, you okay with me placing the fence where the current existing fence is? I can do that. If they sell and I have a new owner and that new owner comes and says, your fence is 6 inches over, you have to move it, I could be on the hook for that. Just trying to prevent, I'm not trying to add costs per se, but I'm just trying to prevent bigger costs and bigger challenges. So I don't know.
Maybe there is like a targeted way to address that though. It's like if you're building on the property line, either a shed or a fence, then you need either a survey or some sort of an agreement with the neighboring.
Right, assuming you know where your property line is. In this case, with that individual contractor's getting ready to build on that, just replace that fence where it exists. And then he's being informed by the surveyor that that fence could be 6 feet over onto the neighbor's property. That's what I want to avoid. I like to do things once. especially building. And I want that for everyone else. And I don't, if there's an agreement or, obviously if I have a survey or I see pins, and those make sense to line up. Yeah, so I've got the authority to require a survey, so I can do that. I'm just wanting to avoid litigation because that wasn't required in the past.
Well, if someone has their fence on another person's property for 50 years, that automatically becomes their property.
Again,
That becomes a legal issue,
right?
which is far beyond the purview of the town of Silverton. That's a much bigger problem.
Talking about like an adverse possession issue.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And there's been incidences directly behind some of our alleys around town where folk over the years, their propane tanks, a fence is in the wrong place, and it's been there long enough to where it just is what it is.
Yeah.
And then it goes way far beyond the town of Silverton. I mean, that's a true legal issue.
Yeah.
I mean, don't you have to require any sort of survey when developing anything? Why is a fence not required at this point in time?
Why isn't a survey required for a fence? Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm saying, unless it's not like imposing on private property, adjacent private property. And maybe it's just on the right of way.
Right.
That's property line too, but that's in some ways easier to identify. And it's less conflictive because it's, if you have 2 inches or 4 inches into the right of way, maybe on that tight alley, it makes a difference, but not so much on some of our wider streets. But if it starts imposing on your neighbor's property, then that's where it becomes problematic. So yes, I mean,
That would end up being a legal issue between the two property owners that are right next to each other.
and not where in a case, if I built,
You get stuck in the middle, then it would
Right.
whole.
if I built the street facing side of my fence and it's 2 inches over my property line, and I thought my original fence was on the property line. There's less litigious, activity between town and that private citizen, potentially. And less of an imposition. I don't know.
Here's a hypothetical question I've got for you. You're out doing an inspection on a new piece of property where somebody's building a home. How do you know where the setbacks are if there's no pins?
You can do a GPS sighting, but generally there should be pins, or a survey, and if there are no pins or they're hidden or they've been removed, then that becomes a problem. Yeah, so having a survey, verifying it. Oftentimes people will utilize other waypoints, if it's someone else's pin down the street, to verify longitudinally or latitudinally. And then it's in a platted or a, block section, you can identify it. But there are a lot of, Anvil's in a case on the Market Street side, like Nico's side, that a lot of those properties are not square. They're not anywhere near, we have to utilize pins to identify it. So, I think it's super important on new construction that homes are, unless you have plenty of room and you want to put it in the middle, that's fine. But if you're picking a side or picking a frontage and you're down to inches, that it's critical to get it right.
So you're looking for direction on this one.
On whether or not we want to put it in the code to require land survey prior to construction of a home. We can get into more specifics if we want. Placement of a fence, building of a fence. I strongly feel like it ought to be required for a new home construction.
And it's not already?
It's not really per the code.
Well, you have the ability to request this. It would just streamline the process.
Right.
It's required up front, and then it would capture those transfer property sales that you might not be privy to.
Right. So time of sale, between of that property, whether there's a structure on it or not, and then certainly for the development of structure. I think at a minimum that should exist.
And it doesn't currently.
Right. Right. Exactly. And there are some benefits to having the flexibility, but I want to catch it before it comes to my desk. It's kind of like doing aerial inspection prior to really pre-planning the design development of a house. We had the Airy Lodge building in town that was designed, and there were going to be two structures, and one of them was going to, if it had been built, the roof would have been 8 feet from a high power line. It never could have happened. There's an example where before it came to my desk, that should have been caught so that it didn't force the owners and the architect to redesign that whole project.
Then it should be required.
Yeah. Sounds to me.
I don't know how anything gets done without a survey. I got that baffling to me.
It's amazing, right?
Well, you're doing a huge expensive project, then you try to save like the 1% cost, I guess that's the logic, right?
It costs you in the long run.
I don't know.
Yeah, totally.
No comes down on top of your roof.
Well, yeah, we'll on an ordinance.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Great. Any last comments or thoughts?
This personal one, this survey requirement would include, and this is where, again, it goes into existing fences and existing fence lines. So if I had some boards missing, just hypothetical, or wanted to repair a section of fence, I would automatically trigger a survey
No,
that's
a repair. If you were rebuilding the fence, I'd like to not.
I mean, knowing how surveys are up here and getting a surveyor up here and knowing how much it costs.
Right.
and all you're wanting to do is just replace the fence that's already been there, but you want to put a nicer one up.
Yeah, I'd like to not have to require the survey for that.
Okay,
The potential, and I'm not saying that we have to, the potential liability is that if that, you know, like in the case, the example that I stated, if that fence is not on the property line and it's off, then whose responsibility is it?
it's the two property owners. It's not
Right.
certainly not yours.
Right. So we're just taking that property owner's taking the assumed risk to rebuild the fence in that location where they assume the property line is. Just fine with me. And in some cases, you know, you could, I mean, you could establish an agreement if there's no established or no survey presented, but that's where the fence has been for the past 50 years. Are you okay, neighbor, with keeping that fence there? I'm just gonna rebuild it and, yeah, I mean, it could save me $3 grand. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Could there be an established building permit type triggered? New construction?
Absolutely.
And the adverse possession point too, like it's your property owner. You need to keep an eye on where your neighbors are building theirs. Their fence.
It'd be on Evan Harris. That's, and adding more stuff to your plate. That's just.
Yeah, I bring this up just because I'm trying to avoid adding stress to it and avoid liability to the town. Or to homeowners, you know, property owners.
Well, but it's also, the homeowner has to be savvy enough to maybe do their due diligence
Sure.
when it comes to certain aspects of the property.
Sure.
And their desires for the property long term.
Part of it comes up for me because the new wildfire resilience code has, I'm now having to permit fencing because the requirements that the last 8 feet of the fence that touches the structure has to be non-combustive.
Correct.
You know, metal, PVC, you know, fire retardant wood, whatever it is. So that's where an aspect of the survey came up as it pertains to fences, but yeah.
All right.
Great, well, we can go ahead and adjourn, committee meeting.